6 p.m. This is our business meeting. It is Tuesday, September 8th, 2020, and we are located in the Joe N. Idolette Teacher Education Center, and the public is invited to come and join us during these meetings. And if you're not familiar where we are located, we are at 6500 57th Street, Vero Beach, and our zip is 32967 if you want to put that into your MapQuest to locate us. But at this time, if you would please stand with me and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Board members, at this time, we need to adopt the orders of the day.
Mrs. Ork?
Yes.
Yes, I would like to add a discussion item. It has a sense of urgency. That's why I wanted to discuss it tonight. Could you please add as a discussion item the property across from Vero Beach High School?
Okay. All right. You're making the motion too?
Yes.
By adopting the orders of the day with adding the discussion item. Mrs. Berenborg with the motion, and I need a second.
Second.
Dr. Schiff. All right. Any discussion?
Yes, I think some of the parameters of what Mrs. I'm fine to discuss the issue. I think some of the parameters that Mrs. Berenborg may be aware of might have changed in the recent, quite recently, and I'm not sure she's aware of that, so we can discuss it at that time.
I had a phone call right before the meeting, so I think I am very aware of where we are with it. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor as amended?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. 5-0. We're moving on to presentations, and I'm excited that we do have presentations tonight, so thank you and welcome to our guests that are here. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will turn it over to Ms. Maddox.
Hello, good evening, everyone. We have two very special presentations tonight. And if you remember, a couple of months back, we had Celebrate Literacy Week. It was more than a couple of months back. I'm losing track of time now. But when schools were open, we had Celebrate Literacy Week Florida. And this contest was sponsored by the Florida Department of Education. And submissions for the contest were based on a theme, Book Your Trip, Adventure Awaits. And if you saw our videos from that week, or if you were on our campuses, there was some really amazing work that was done in our media centers. Students were filling out passports and carrying them around to book their adventure and to take different journeys through literature. But one stood out, and that was Storm Grove Middle School. And I'm very happy to say that Mrs. Bieber, principal of Storm Grove, she entered Storm Grove in the competition, and they won first place in the state for Celebrate Literacy Week for middle schools. And yes, let's give them a round of applause. And their submission was a picture of a door display created by Miss Green and Miss Peterson's 7th grade language arts classes for this special week. And they combined their doors to create a scene of a boat traveling on the open seas, with the waves being titles of favorite books by the students. So if I could please have Mrs. Bieber come up and announce our other special guests and tell us a little bit more about what Storm Grove did.
Thank you. If I could have Mrs. Sessoms join me. She's our media specialist. She is our magic silent bullet. She is always so quiet. She's behind the scenes, but she is really the person that did the submission for us and really is always looking for every single possible thing we can do for our students to have them shine. Storm Grove, anything that we get, any contest we get, we enter. The Elks Contest essays, the every essay we can get, we enter and pride ourselves on winning a lot of those for our students winning those awards. And again, Mrs. Sessoms is always looking for those ways to make our students shine. We still use AR, we work with the Rotary Club for laptops in the spring for those students who have the highest number of AR points. And Ms. Sessoms wound up being our Teacher of the Year because she literally teaches every single child at Storm Grove. She has the language arts classes come into the Media Center on a regular scheduled basis. She works with those classes, works with those students, and somehow finds a way to find that book for every single student. So I wanted her to be here because really we could never do half of what we do without Mrs. Sessoms.
I don't have much to add to that. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed my job at Storm Grove. I've been there for over 7 years, and I can say that it is an amazing place to work. There's a lot of support from the staff, students, and parents alike, so it's a great place to be, and I'm happy to be there.
Thank you.
And before you sit down, we will be presenting a new award at each board meeting. One will go to a school and one will go to an individual, and it is called the Shining Star Award. So I would like to present the first Shining Star Award to Storm Grove Middle School.
Wow.
Thank you. And again, really, we do love the competitions and love the things for the students, and it really just gives all these students such an opportunity to shine.
And if we could gather over here for a quick picture, please. For our next presentation, a few weeks ago, Lieutenant Commander Landis, he emailed me to let me know that we had a very special student with a very special recognition at Sebastian River High School. And that student is Mia Martinelli. She's in the audience with us tonight. And Mia's mom is also a teacher at Storm Grove Middle School. Been in her classroom before. It's very nice. And Mia was one of only 2 cadets from Area 7 in the state of Florida to receive a very special award. And this award is the Legion of Valor Bronze Cross for Achievement JROTC Award. Nationwide, only 22 cadets receive this award each year. Lieutenant Commander Landis and the principal, they nominated her earlier this summer, and they just recently received notification that Mia was selected. So I'm going to ask Lieutenant Commander Landis to please come up and tell us a little bit more about this special award and a little bit more about Mia.
Well, thank you. By far, one of the most enjoyable parts of my job is helping young adults who deserve to be recognized to do just that. And tonight, we have a special recognition. It's already been mentioned, the numbers. I'll share some additional numbers with you. I'm a numbers guy. So in my time so far at Sebastian River High School with the different cadets that have come through, and we've had some outstanding cadets, to say the least, I've seen over 800 cadets, or trained, taught, mentored over 800 cadets. In Area 7, which is essentially the state of Florida, there are 9,000 plus cadets each year. That number fluctuates. And then nationwide, Navy JROTC boasts 83,000 cadets. So Ms. Martinelli tonight is being recognized by an organization that is a unique organization for recognition. We have an award ceremony every year, and a number of cadets are recognized by the American Legion, by the Navy League, and many other organizations that support us every year. But this organization is a nationwide organization that only selects a few each year. Not only do they select here or at the JROTC level, but they also select at a college level for ROTC students who are earning their commission in the various branches of the military. So 22 cadets are chosen nationwide from 83,000 cadets. Wow. And we're fortunate enough tonight to have one of those here at the meeting. The difference between this organization and others is that in order to be a member of the Legion of Valor, you have to have received a very prestigious award. The awards that are required in order to be a member include the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, the Navy Cross, and the Air Force Cross, to name the top awards. These are veterans who have been recognized at the highest level by our country. They then recognize our young adults in a manner that's unique compared to other organizations. So, like it was mentioned, I nominated Ms. Martinelli earlier in the summer, and with the principal, we forwarded on a package to our area manager. He then had the arduous task of selecting cadets that he thought were the best in the state of Florida to then go into a nationwide pool to be selected as well. So we were very, very excited when we received word that Ms. Martinelli was selected. I will be forwarding an article to the Legion of Valor. They take that article and they forward that to the Library of Congress, and it's submitted at the Library of Congress. So it's a big deal. We're very, very happy that she's here with us as part of our company. Now, if I were to give you her resume, we may spend some time here, and I don't want to embarrass her or spend that much time, but she's our current commanding officer, cadet commanding officer, cadet lieutenant commander, so she is the cadet rank equivalent of myself. She's in command of over 100 cadets this year. She's done a fantastic job. She's currently #1 in her class at Sebastian River High School. And you can imagine that just getting to that level, all the things that it takes a student to do that. So I won't list them all, although I wouldn't mind. I have tonight for her a certificate from the Legion of Valor organization. I also have a medal that she's authorized to wear on her JROTC uniform, as well as a ribbon. So, getting the appropriate uniform here.
And we have one more thing from our school district to Mia. And Mia, you are the first individual to receive the Shining Star Award from our school district. And we are very proud of you, and congratulations on your honor. So we have this award and certificate for Mia, and congratulations and best wishes in your senior year. And if everyone would gather.
Can we get, if the board members want to speak to this before we come up there, is that okay?
Absolutely.
I know. Do we, board members?
I just like to say it's an honor to be in the room with you. Thank you for all you do, and it's wonderful that we are able to recognize students like this. And so we appreciate all you do. We appreciate what you do, and what your parents, I'm sure, are very, very proud. And thank you for making us proud. Thank you.
I'll keep it, following suit, I'll keep it brief. Congratulations, you are an honor to this district, to yourself, to your parents, and to the people who will come after you.
Mrs. Rosario? Comment?
Thank you. Yes, congratulations. Never stop working hard to reach your dreams. Never give up. Any obstacles that come your way, pursue right through them. And know that with the goals that you have set for yourself, you will achieve them. So congratulations. This is just one step into a super bright future for yourself.
Mia, I just want to say congratulations. I know that you have spectacular leadership at Sebastian River High School that's helped you achieve this, and I want to say thank you to you, sir, for your service. I can't say how proud we are of you because there's just not enough words. So congratulations, and we look forward to you coming back and telling us all the wonderful things that you've accomplished, because we know that you have a great future ahead of you.
Presentations tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. That was great. Great. So we are moving into the citizen input. We did not receive any citizen input to the citizen input September 8th at indianriverschools.org. So we do not have any of those to read, and I did not receive any tonight. But we will continue to offer our citizen input to be emailed to us, and if you do not have that email, it will rotate based on the date. It's citizen input. For example, tonight was September 8th at indianriverschools.org. So citizen input and then the month and the day. And if you have problems sending the emails, you can contact the district, and we will make sure that you get the right email address. So we're going to move into the approval of the consent agenda. I need a motion for approval.
Move approval.
Okay. Mrs. Justice, would you like to speak to your motion?
As always with the consent agenda, items are brought to us during the workshop. Not every item, but some items are brought before us in the workshop. And if you'd like to review any of these items or any of the materials or backup and discussion that board members provided, I would tune into the workshop from today at 1 o'clock.
No, ma'am.
Any other discussion on this item? Okay. I just want to say that I had talked to Dr. Moore about one of the items, and we have reviewed that, some of the personnel recommendations, it's not uncommon, but it does happen, especially during the time that he's been given during the COVID, trying to get schools open, that typically I personally would like to see the personnel recommendations being brought at the time that we're creating the budget and during the summer process. But I do give Dr. Moore grace in this because he's had a busy schedule. And so tonight I will be approving this because these aren't usual times, and I respect Dr. Moore, and I'm going to support him in this. So, do we have any?
I do have something to mention in that it's come to my attention that there are some classes that are still waiting for teachers. And I think it's an important point that you bring up, and I just want to expand upon it. I'm aware of them. I've brought it to the attention of district leadership, and I've been assured that if your child currently does not have a teacher assigned to their classroom, that we are doing everything that we can to make sure that we do have a teacher for their class. If this still is a concern for you, I do ask that you reach out to the district and let them know, because you need to advocate for your children. And there are give the district office a call the superintendent's office, and he'll be able to address your concerns as he sees fit. So please don't be afraid to speak up.
Mrs. Rosario?
Thank you. I wasn't going to mention this now, but since you brought it up, Mrs. Zork, I'm just going to follow up with your comment because I had a concern about something on there as well. What I'd like to ask Dr. Moore to do, Dr. Moore, could you please review the salary schedule, and can we add a provision? I think this was something that you mentioned earlier, a provision in the salary schedule that prevents someone from getting multiple raises within one calendar year. Just so that, if you get a district-wide raise, you're not liable to get another raise within the next year, or you get capped at that one raise until the next year. I mean, I just think it's fair to consider something like this. I know that you just brought us a salary schedule to approve not long ago, and that's fine, but as we go through, we realize there might have been some things that were not added to it. This is something that I think is important. I see you nodding your head. Yes, sir.
Through the chair, I don't know where you're looking at me. Yeah, we will, based on the conversation, I think it is a very valid point, very similar to what other districts do as it relates to their salary schedules. Clauses within the salary handbook, if your name went to the board over an extended period of time, you would not be eligible for that. Kind of I want to say, double dipping criteria. But what I will be doing moving forward is reviewing our current salary handbook, which does not have that line. And if there are opportunities to bring that back to the board, I certainly would do that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. There is something else, Dr. Moore, on this topic that before you came to us, the board requested of the previous superintendent, it was Dr. Rendell who was the superintendent at the time. And then when Dr. Moxley came on, I'm not sure if we were consistent with our request, but we asked for quarterly reports on the exit interviews. The exit interviews are given to employees who leave the district for whatever purpose, whatever their reason is. And then they are issued a exit interview, they fill it out, and then the results of the exit interview, it was given to us a couple of times, and at one point the board collectively requested for it to be the report of that, sent to us quarterly. It hasn't been consistent, but since we're on that topic now, can we revisit that?
Absolutely. Through the chair, that is an item I think with the chair's grace, we add to the dialogue or conversation in our next committee. I wasn't familiar with the process, but if that was standard operating procedures, there's no reason not to continue that information being provided to the board. So I look forward to discussing that and providing that information to the board.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. No further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? 5-0. Okay, we do not have any items pulled for action. I'm going to go into allow Dr. Moore to go into his superintendent report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's poignant that I continue to reserve this time for a COVID update until further notice. Although I would like to present on other items, unfortunately, I think this is the appropriate time. The update this time is to really talk through 11 days of school. So we've been in school for 11 days. I am very proud of the work that collectively we as a district have done to open schools. It has been an absolutely outstanding opening of schools. Everyone has gone above and beyond to get this work done. The creation of 2 different models, the distribution of devices, the willingness of our teachers to come together to create environments for students to find meaningful instruction on the other end of a computer is truly appreciative. The work that our employees have done transporting students to schools. Every time you drive by a bus, they have that mask on, greeting our kids beneath that mask. Our schools continue to be extremely clean and present. So we've done an absolutely outstanding job in opening schools. And as the first week, as you know, a number of students wanting to return to brick and mortar, and we think that is an absolute outstanding practice or problem to have. And as we mentioned at the last meeting, which was the second day of school, is we had to put a cap on that because the overall organization of the plan was dependent upon all 3 models. So we have asked principals to hold true to the selections the parents have made, always with the caveat when you're in the school dealing with a parent and it's in the absolute best interest of the child, you have the absolute authority to make a decision that's in the best interest of the children without calling anybody to find a student in a new model. We have done a good job there as well. We will be sending home information next week. As you were to really think about it, this is the 4th week of this 9 weeks, even though it really is just the 3rd week of school because we pushed the start of school back 2 weeks. We will afford the opportunity really to share all of the data that we have to this particular point, the number of quarantines that we've had. I think the number right now is in total 101 students have been quarantined over the course of the last 11 days of school, which is extremely, extremely small in comparison to other districts. And as you know, mentioned in the previous meeting, we're working some cases right now, so that number will go up, although not too much. So I want to let everyone know these are the adults in our building that have been positive. These are the quarantines. This is the reaction to a quarantine in terms of our ability to provide that work to students as quickly as possible. We have been saying a seamless transition when you have to quarantine in order to ensure instruction continues. The first time that we did it, it wasn't as smooth as it is now. And that's great, but it's also unfortunate that we're getting good at the actual practice of being able to do it. So the more we go on, the easier it has been. The actual quarantine process, I think, is a model in terms of how we're implementing it, the speed in which we're able to convene, the collaboration with the health department, the amount of information that we have available. We're getting these investigations done. And collectively and collaboratively, in some cases, in 90 minutes, and sometimes 90 minutes on a Saturday or Sunday. So very proud of that work, although looking forward to the opportunity in which we don't have to do those. Once we provide the parents the opportunity to look at that reality, we're going to ask for their input. And it is transitional, was defined as, just as the title describes itself, as a transition based on that particular reality. So moving into next week, that'll be the opportunity for parents to provide input to us so we can begin the planning process of returning students to school or moving away from the transitional model to the virtual model as well. So we're seeking that input in order to start to bring students back to school. Also, within the virtual platforms, both transitional and virtual, we are collecting data to determine if students are in the appropriate place, and in the appropriate place means finding success. So we were going back, as you know, we have a principals meeting tomorrow, reviewing with them to determine the progress students are making in the virtual option 2, which is the virtual option. As you know, that is a virtual platform process. We are monitoring the progress and providing direct feedback to students. But when students aren't finding success, because that was the option they thought was going to be best for them, and it's not, we need to be able to lead the conversation that even with 2 weeks of data, we are now concerned that that model may not be working out for the best interest of a child in a home. Let's look at bringing them back to brick and mortar if that is a level of comfort for the parents. Let's look at a modified version. So we need to begin to problem solve to address concerns as they arise within that virtual model. The goal is to move away from transitional. We need those teachers in order to bring those students back at the beginning of the second 9 weeks. We will be creating an opportunity to be intentional when we return our students back, kind of celebrating their return, if that is the case. So a lot of words to say that we will continue to be fluid in this situation. We will provide opportunities for parents to provide us input. When we made the selection to those models, our percent was between 15 to 17% over the course of that 2-week period. Now we are, the last 7 days, at a 2 to 3% positive rate. I don't know what next week's going to look like. I don't know what the impact of Labor Day is going to be. And it would be presumptuous of me to make a prediction that, hey, we're opening back up and everyone's going to come back. And that would probably be misleading. I can say with all honesty, my desire is to bring students back. Very comfortable with what I'm seeing in the schools. Very comfortable with what I'm seeing on the buses. When we look at the number of students who are in that transitional number, we'll be able to bring them back. But we can't without the teachers who are teaching transitional. It would be a relatively smooth process. There would be schedules to change. As you know, the class size average for the transitional teachers is slightly higher. So you would be able to, in a secondary experience, the goal would be, I have Ms. Justice for Language Arts. I come back, I'm still going to have Ms. Justice for Language Arts, but in the transitional, I may have had her second period, but now I have her fifth period. And also problem solving and reaching out to those children. This is the elective that you had in transitional. What elective do you really want? And let us give you that elective as well. So it is a big transition if we go this particular route, if the reality allows us to go in this particular route. At the same time, we're being extremely intentional of the creation of school improvement plans. Mr. Meyer is leading principal walkthroughs tomorrow. His entire department will be out with all principals at 3 different schools conducting very focused look-fors and walkthroughs, really building instructional capacity with our principals. And we're not allowing COVID to be an excuse. And it is a very, very difficult time to lead. And I want to give a shout out to our principals, our teachers. I think a lot of people have taken their foot off the gas in terms of not being able to hit that particular reality. But every single employee in the school district, support staff, teachers, principals, our students have really been receptive to getting back to work. And I can tell you, just in my 10 days of being back, and as you know, my wife's an interventionist now, or always has been, but now in this district, joining Mike's union. Where we're seeing students come back to where we typically see them, I think if you were to have conversations with teachers, there is concern. There is concern. These are teachers who have been doing this work for a number of years. They know where kids come back because I've been teaching second grade or third grade or fourth grade for a number of years. We anticipate that summer slide. But teachers are like, there's a lot of work to be done with where students currently are. And in respect for that, we're going to support the heck out of them. We're going to come together. We're going to provide as many interventions collectively. As you know, I rolled out an initiative which we're calling A2, which is helping students acclimate to this new reality, which I think we've done a good job of doing, and then accelerating. And when I say accelerating, it is eliminating and being intentional of eliminating that COVID slide by December and not waiting to the end of the school year. And that is a very, very aspirational goal. But at the same time, if we can be very intentional before school, after school, during lunch, at the confines of the school day, finding innovative ways to provide that intervention or that remediation, that extra time. We have lost time. And I still give credit to what we did at the close of school. Very, very proud of that. But that time away really speaks to the value of what a teacher does in the life of a child. And as good as some of these models are, if we learn nothing more from COVID, is that the teacher assigned to groups of children can truly change the life of those children. And we need to really, really support them and grow them in a way to have as much impact as possible. Because right now what I'm seeing in schools are teachers who are very excited, very innovative, but a little overwhelmed. And when I say overwhelmed, it's their expertise that in their own reflection of where they're seeing their students now, that says we got to ramp this up. So as you see your teachers, as they reach out to you, acknowledge all of their hard work. Some of the things I would encourage you to see before it goes away is some of the innovation that we're seeing in those transitional models. I was actually got to see it with Ms. Barenborg at one school the first day. She literally turned her classroom into like a studio. And had 2 computers going. It was very, very, very impressive. So a lot of work still to be done, a lot of information. As I begin to receive the information from our parents, I'll continue to share that, and when we come back together, I will bring a plan to the board for your approval on on what we do next, what our next steps would be. And I can't clearly define that for you now because I just don't have the reality of what 2 weeks is going to look like from here on out. Or the level of comfort parents will have in terms of returning their schools. I would love to have a presentation that says transitional is transitioning into brick and mortar or transitioning into the virtual space, and we're bringing those transitional teachers back, and we're ready to greet them and doing some very innovative, creative ways to greet them. That is the presentation, Madam Chair.
Okay. It looks like Mrs. Rosario has a question or a comment. And then Dr. Schiff.
Yes, I have a few questions. So Dr. Moore, thank you for that update. I do appreciate it. And I do pray every day for the teachers and for the students and administrators in our district, district workers, people at the district office are not far from my prayers as well. But it's a very difficult time. And I know that doing this work now really calls everyone to areas of their craft that they probably never thought they would challenge themselves to think outside of the box and to be creative in so many different ways to reach kids now in very different ways. So one of my questions, and I have a couple, I don't want to dominate all this time, but one of my questions is, with all that our teachers are doing, and some people, like you mentioned, with 2 computers, turning their classroom into studios, and some people turning their homes or their offices into mini classrooms even, will we have an opportunity, and I'm almost sure you're going to say yes, will we have an opportunity to send out surveys to teachers on what's working, what's not working, and then will we have an opportunity for teachers to share with other teachers their best practices? Hey, this is working great, this isn't working great, this is what I'm doing, and someone else can kind of tap into that and say, I love that idea. Can we create future PDs, professional development days, specific to this kind of training? Because, you know, our needs now are very different than where we may have thought our needs were in terms of professional development a year ago. What are your thoughts on that?
Through the chair, I will send data to the board tomorrow. What we have done over the course of the last rolling 4 weeks is survey initially teachers regarding their level of comfort and readiness in terms of opening schools. And we use that feedback to drive our future actions to be more responsive to their particular needs. Mm-hmm. Going into the opening of schools, we provided very specific surveys to parents regarding the quality of education within each of those 3 models. And then I send that to cabinet and principals on Sunday. Happy Sunday to me. For them to begin to problem solve around their particular areas to make modification and changes. I'll send it so you can have a level of comfort as to how we're responding in A, to finding the reality, and B, responding to that. In terms of professional development, I think Mr. Meyer, with Dr. Lord, has done a absolutely outstanding job of creating organization, a structure that maximizes the volume of development. So from the first week, when we initially looked at where we need to enhance development, we were able to pivot extremely quickly to provide that additional support. One of the things that we continue to highlight in looking at school improvement plans is building capacity at school sites, using instructional coaches really in a way in which when they applied to be instructional coaches, they never knew they would have to become these tech-savvy innovators. But really building capacity at school sites and making sure that resource is continually there. So the answer to your question is that is ongoing in terms of how we do this work now, very responsive to what the reality is, and then trying to problem solve to continuously improve it. The volume of development, I'm very satisfied. Mr., is there anything you wanted to add?
Just briefly, I think you hit on it. Dr. Lord set up a system where there's PLCs going on for the different categories of teachers. So there's one PLC that is the elementary virtual teachers, another one that's the elementary transitional teachers. So all the things you're saying, Ms. Rosario, where they're learning from each other, and they're just constantly in this teams throwing different information. I did this at work. Who can help me with this? And so they have structured meetings set up also throughout the week so that they can provide each other feedback. And as Dr. Moore said, that was something that we noticed from the first round of surveys that we implemented almost immediately the first couple days the teachers were back. And I think that those teachers would tell you that they've grown a lot from those PLCs and that structure. And if need be, we could certainly take that to a larger audience. But right now, I think those teachers feel supported within that structure.
Thank you. I have two more questions, Madam Chair. The first is with the transition coming in, Dr. Moore, I don't know if when we get there, just food for thought, you probably don't even have an answer right now, which is fine. When we opened up school online, what we have is the word transitional model, option 1, option 2, within our plan, the current plan. If we use those same words, transition into school again, will we get or maybe we can say second transition or something like that, so that there's no confusion between the first transition in August and then, the next transition, whenever that will be. You don't need to answer that right now. I just wanted to say that, when we go online and we kind of look for the plan, it's already written that there's already been a transition. So how do we distinguish between, other than looking at the date of them? Not us, but, I'm talking community and parents when they want to look for what is that going to look like to send my kid back to school again if I'm in that, the hybrid model. The next thing is online. I know that in July and also in, I think, the beginning of August, the request to have the Safe Schools Reopening Plan translated into Spanish was well received, but it has not yet still been there. And if it has been done, it's not on the website. All of these resources are very important, and especially the technology resources. Can we make sure that we get that done? I mean, I think that this should be automatic. Maybe it takes a little time, but if we can do that, I'd appreciate that.
Through the chair, we expedited the translation of the document, so I'll get back to you as to where it can be found on our website, because I know it's been done.
Okay.
I just want to verify that it can be accessed.
Okay, and my last is the dashboard. You've been updating board members on the district's version of the dashboard in terms of, who are getting tested and who aren't. I know you said that you were going to have that public this week. Can you give us an update on that? And I'm going to mute my mic because my dog is barking. Can you give us an update on the dashboard and what parents or the community might look for with the dashboard?
Through the chair, we wanted to create the system where it is seamlessly being updated. The dog just jumped into the screen. Never had that happen at a board meeting before. So as you look at the dashboard today, we did update the asymptomatic. Those are employees who are going to be tested who are not symptomatic, obviously asymptomatic. We added that data element today. So I would anticipate by Thursday or Friday putting that on our webpage. I think it is an outstanding way really to keep everyone informed where we are as a system and as a district. Started sharing it with board members to get a feel for it, but I think as our system works, and you may see Ms. Maddox stepping out of this meeting in a minute, that will be to send a press release regarding today's, if I can get him right there.
I think she already has.
Have you? You already?
Oh, you have it? Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay, sorry.
But that would be a go-to point regardless of the day or time where it's being updated. Do want to get some feedback from Suzanne before we actually share it, but once I have that, it would be good to go.
I think the dashboard is a great resource. I really do. I appreciate it, and I appreciate that it kind of mimics what we see with the health department, and it gives, I think the best part about the dashboard is that it will help parents understand district-wide what is happening with, COVID-19, that they don't necessarily, or they may not see on a daily basis. And specific to schools, when they want to make decisions to return their child from the hybrid model to the brick and mortar, I think that this dashboard will be incredibly helpful for them in that purpose. So I don't know whose idea that was, but it really was genius. So thank you for that, whomever came up with it.
Sunday, that's what I do. All right, thank you.
Okay, that's why he gets paid the big bucks. Think of this stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I want to go back to what you said about what you and teachers are noticing about the backslide since students have been out. And just want to request, I'm sure you're going to be collecting information on it, but I'd like to see information without creating a whole bunch more work, because I presume you're already going to do most of this. But information to the degree that it's clear where and how that's happening. Is it, is it identifiable by grade? Is there a difference in race? Is there a difference by, geographic location? Like, how can we pinpoint where this is happening and to whom? And I know you're going to collect the data because you can't fix it, obviously, unless you have the data to target that. But I'd like to request seeing that data as you produce it.
Through the chair, it is a extremely interesting case study to be done.
Yeah.
As you requested, I think I will send it to the board and kind of do a deeper presentation regarding where students fall within each of those three options. We don't have a research team, but we have, as I have been conditioned, really collected that information, looked at student demographics within schools, within choice options, within ethnicity, and it is very interesting within FSA levels how we are going to be able to respond to where some of that information is going to be critical. It's going to be critical. And some of that of us defining how we're going to get information back to parents regarding student progress. But I'll share that information to the board, and we'll continue to monitor that as we move through however long this takes, because it is going to be significant as we move through time.
Well, and it just follow up, because whatever it is we are experiencing in this district, I can guarantee is being replicated in one way or another in 66 other districts. So the more information we have about how that's occurring gives us really important information as we move forward in trying to restructure education, both in Indian River County, but more broadly than that as well.
Absolutely.
Mrs. Justin?
And I would actually challenge that, because I think that the uniqueness of each district to be able to respond and adapt to student need, plans from last year, the variance between districts with what they did at the end of last year, what they've done at the beginning of this year, is going to really skew the data, because you're not going to be able to look at apples to apples, even within demographics so I think it's a continued, I think it's going to be a continued look at how you respond in differentiated instruction to meet the needs of all students. And I think that occasionally there are assumptions made about student growth or students being able to regain time, and that isn't always necessarily what we're seeing. I just think that as interesting as it will be to look at this district's data, it will be very different from district to district.
And I'd add, which is, we don't have to get into a whole research debate here, but I would add that that's actually what makes it interesting. Because what we see here, if we see in districts that have very different plans, they're seeing some of the same patterns and the same trends. We don't know that, we have no idea, but we don't know what we're going to see. And I think it'll be really interesting to see across models and across plans to give us information about, frankly, what works and how we cope with circumstances like these that all of us are trying to figure out how to cope with.
Chair, and my desire would be to look at it in real time, to be able to respond, so it's not this backwards view in terms of, if we would have known this, we should have done this. And I think we as a system are creating a level of nimbleness to respond. People are getting used to, okay, well, we're changing again, and we're not changing because we like to change, we're changing because the information and data tells us there is a more effective way of doing this particular work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. I have questions, but I want to give our board members the opportunity. Do you have any? Okay. Dr. Moore, I was wondering, and you don't have to answer it now, but I would like to know, based on the transition model and also the virtual model, what attendance is looking like on those, and are we contacting these students that we're seeing that has a high rate of not signing on? So that you don't have to answer that now unless you have the answer.
Through the chair, we did have conversations over the Thursday and Friday of how we're going to actually monitor progress, monitoring progress in the virtual reality. We've defined that, pushing that information as we're monitoring progress within the platforms. Attendance as a whole, we'll be able to input that into the dashboard, our dashboard, to look at attendance within all three models.
And I have a question, because I don't know the answer, is if we have an elementary student that is signed up for transitional and it's the subject per subject situation, whereas we have our secondary that you're transitioning to a different teacher, that is I see that's a way to keep attendance, but what happens what happens when a teacher is teaching a student and they disappear out of the class? Or do we have support for the teachers to get on the phone with the parent and say, your child's not logged in, and they were logged in for the first and second period, or, the first or second subject? How are we monitoring that and helping to make sure that, that they're staying attuned to the subject?
Staying put, and one of the things I've realized is the parent-teacher communication in that model is probably at a higher level than it's ever been. There have been scenarios, just as you just voiced, that I was here for the first 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden I put the my picture up or something, and it's constantly logging in. One of the tricks that a teacher told me is when you share your screen, you have to have yourself also into the group twice, basically, so you can always see how the kids are responding to the presentation, just as you would do in a class. So in a typical teams, as we're all team experts in here, if Ms. Rosario shared her screen, Ms. Rosario would lose the view of us. So we all can go off and do whatever we want and, be fine. So I said the best practice, I was going to say the workaround, the best practice is to be logged on. As you share your screen, you're also in the class. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's an example as to what Mr. Meyer was sharing. So teachers now know, okay, well, tell me, what's the answer to the question that's now on my screen? And those are some of the things that I think we're learning through together, and then following up with parents as needed. Mm-hmm. And once again, as we create these models, at the forefront of them is if your child is not finding success, we want to lead the conversation on intervening to get them in a space where they can be successful, mm-hmm. if it's not that environment.
When we're talking about the transitional model, trying to reevaluate this after the 9 weeks, if parents feel safe to send their kids back into the classroom, I want to just verify that I'm hearing what I'm hearing, is that our goal is to get those transitional students back into the classroom, but if that is the model that a parent has chosen, but they still do not feel comfortable going back into the classroom, I'm not hearing that we're going to close that down and push the other students into virtual, are we?
Through the chair, that is a complex question to answer. What I want to say is yes, that is, it was a transitional model. We want to transition from one into the other. Now, what I don't know is where the reality is going to be. I think we were relatively transparent we were transparent on selling a model and being intentional in calling it transition is to transition back. We've always said, and we'll continue to say, based on that level of comfort. Part of the reason of collecting that information is to problem solve with relevant data and not make assumptions. So as I learn the reality within Indian River, I become a little bit more effective on creating and designing plans that minimize the need for change, which I don't like to do.
So I'm just going to voice my opinion on this, and obviously there's 4 other opinions on this, but as a parent, and as a board member, we have given our parents 3 options, and I think 9 weeks might not be enough to have that comfort level. So I'm hoping that, like you say, we look at the surveys and we phase the transition model out. But I'm not, depending where the numbers are and how it is in 5 weeks, you know, I don't want to force our transitional parents over into virtual because that's a total different scenario, but yet I don't want to have to force them into the classroom setting if that's not where they're ready to go. Obviously, I'm a firm believer and I'm enjoying the brick and mortar option as a parent and a grandmother, but I do respect the choices of the parents, and I don't want to force them into the virtual model because the virtual model is a totally different setting. But I do want to say that I've been researching this around the country, and I want to tell you that you have done a superb job, you and the entire team, over the summer, putting this together. And when I say that you are an example for districts around the country, you truly are. And I just want to say that the entire team has done a fantastic job, and you all should be very proud of your work. I know it's been long hours and long days, and, you know, trial and error, and you've tested, you know, all these options. But you've really done a fantastic job. And when I talk to other people around the country, I just can't say enough positive in the work that you've done. And after talking with other district leaders, I don't know of any other districts that have allowed for the 3-week transition for our teachers and our other staff to come in so that they had that time to prepare for the opening of the school year. So I want to say thank you for bringing that to us and allowing that to be an option, because I really do think that's something to be proud of.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I did ask the superintendent, was that today? I think it was today, about the mid-year review that he brought to us a couple meetings ago, and I think it hasn't been put on. I asked him, you know, when would we like to have that conversation, because I believe he asked for us all to speak to him separately. Because when you just said that, it reminded me of, he does need that feedback. He needs to know, you know, we appreciate the stuff that he's been doing. So is that going to be something that we're going to be bringing to the next meeting?
My intent is, in these meetings, I think I said I would bring it the next meeting. In prepping for this board meeting, I think we have 2 more meetings where we don't have agenda prep. So we'll be able to get those in between those particular meetings, and then we'll be back on the workshop that we discussed this morning,
Okay.
this afternoon.
All right.
So that's it.
All right, let's move into discussion. We have an item that we were going to briefly discuss, and that was the baseball fields. Mrs. Berenborg said that she has some news that she wanted to share with us.
Sure. Yeah, concerning the land across from the high school. We've used these fields as a school district, and we've used the parking, especially for football games, and I believe our juniors used to use it for parking as well. And there were 2 articles this last week, and one was in the TC Palm, the other one was in 32963. I was quoted in the TC Palm article, although I wasn't quite sure I was being quoted with my conversation. But I will say that because that article came out, I had received several phone calls and some inquiries about it. So it was quite interesting, though, the phone calls that I got. And because of that, I wound up making lots of phone calls. So between last Friday and now, right before the school board meeting, I spoke to a city council member, a county commissioner, a county attorney, superintendent, Jeff Pinkering of the Indian River Community Foundation, and a few times to the attorney that Joe Graves has handling the project calls. So it's been interesting what's happened in the last few days. since, I think, Friday. The county commission had a deed restriction on that land with Joe Graves, for those of you that don't know. And the deed restriction, according to the county attorney, says that the purchaser agrees that the primary use is for recreational activities, youth-related or charitable. The county was in negotiations with Mr. Graves because he did have a buyer, and that has changed. So personally, although I agree with the need for middle-class housing, I don't think having it right across from the high school is the best use of that property, personally. I will say that just before our meeting, I received a call back again from the attorney with Mr. Graves' foundation, and he has now retained ownership of the property and would like to hear what we'd like to bring forward as ideas for a green space. So in reviewing the community's options, I called Jeff Pinkerine a few times, and he is president and CEO of the Indian River Community Foundation. And he has expressed interest in helping with this project. I suggest that we try to partner with the city, the county, and Indian River Community Foundation to pursue a community green space project to present to Mr. Graves. And this idea mirrors the original deed restriction that the county put into the purchase and the land agreement. There are funds and grants that are possible solutions for this project and new market tax money. Some of the suggestions that were offered, walking paths, cross-country, could run meets there, have a pavilion to honor Jimmy. Use of the parking for us as a school district, and possibly keep one or the two ball fields. Also work with St. Francis Manor as a possibility as well, because they need some property, and that would be on the north end. Our cost may be maintenance or security split with the city, however that could be negotiated. My personal goal for this is to work with our municipalities, the Indian River Community Foundation and Mr. Graves, to establish a beautiful green space that could be used by our students as well as our community while honoring Jimmy Graves. Because of this discussion, originally I found out, no, the negotiations weren't happening, and then that kind of changed today. So I think what I'm asking then is for us to look into, would we like to look into possibility of a joint venture with the city? I hate for this land to be used in another way without us having this discussion of whether or not we would like to see if we could use it as well.
Okay. Any conversation?
Sure. I've been in I've been in communication with Mr. Graves. I'll be joining the Jimmy Graves Foundation board once I'm no longer a board member. It's my understanding that Mr. Graves does have the intention to keep the land under his ownership. And going forward, there will be some different decisions being made. I think that the conversation regarding this is somewhat premature. While I think you've brought up some interesting items, I think given the fact that Mr. Graves does still in fact own the property, out of respect to him and his family and Jimmy's memory, that we perhaps have this conversation.
Technical difficulty here.
That we perhaps have this conversation in another setting where Mr. Graves and any representatives of Mr. Graves be a part of that conversation.
May I?
Go ahead.
Yes, I did speak to the attorney about that, and I asked her if it would be okay for me to discuss it on the dais tonight, and would that be comfortable with them? And the answer was yes. So that is why I'm bringing it to the board tonight. I don't think this is secret negotiations. It should be very public. This is property that the whole community is interested in. And no disrespect at all to the Jimmy Graves Foundation, but I did feel like it's beneficial to let them know maybe where the school board might lay in this information, because a lot of people have asked, why isn't the school board involved in this? And the question I had is, yeah, I wonder why, because it's never been brought up as a discussion on the dais for us, as far as I've been on the board.
Twice.
I'm sure it was before I was on the board.
It was.
Yeah.
Who is the person that you spoke with representing Mr. Graves?
I'd rather not say, if that's okay.
I don't, Mrs. Rosario, did you have a question or a comment?
Unmute yourself, Mrs. Rosario.
Jackie, we can't hear you, hon.
Oh my gosh, this mic is gonna drive me crazy. I had a question before we started this discussion, but before I get to what I wanted to say, let me just ask, I don't want to jump the gun. I'm a little unfamiliar with what is happening here. I was trying to follow you, Mrs. Barenborg. Is this property, and I heard Mrs. Justice say that Mr. Graves is still the owner of this property. So can you just, I don't understand the purpose of bringing this forth to us. Is this that the district can purchase it? Or is this where the district, because I heard you suggest that we go into a joint venture with the city. I don't understand the ultimate goal here. I know that we can, okay, let me hear you. Please.
Sure. What was brought forward to me, right, what was brought forward to me is an idea similar to what they did in Naples, or Fort Myers, which is the Southwest Florida Community Foundation had created a hub with an agreement with the county and the city. I'm not quite sure if school board was involved in that one, but it was a community collaboration to do exactly what this was, to create green space that was land that could have been used for developers. And whenever you're looking at land that's very valuable that a developer could use versus for green space, you know, you've got two different looks at what are you going to do with that land. And I think it's worth a discussion on this school board to talk about that land that is adjacent next to our high school, to let Mr. Graves know, you know, of our interest or of our interest to partner somehow with the city or with the Graves Foundation to help keep it a green space.
Okay.
So is this that parking lot that's across from the football field? That corner space?
It's the one directly across from the high school, the baseball fields that are there with the parking lot.
Okay. So I'm really unfamiliar with, I would have to do some research myself. I'm not disregarding the information that you're sharing, but because I am so unfamiliar with it, I am not willing right now to engage in any or make any decisions moving forward on it. I will tell you that at this point, I do not think that it would be in the best interest of this district to do anything joint with the city or with any organization that, you know, ultimately, I don't know the legal, you know, who uses it, who doesn't use it, you know, who manages the schedule on it, who manages the maintenance on it. You know, it would probably be best for us to stay out of anything joint unless we own it outright. And right now, I'm not ready to get into any further discussion about it until I can do research. But if Mrs. Justice is saying that it's owned, I don't know how we could come to consensus on using land without or coming to a joint decision with the city, and none of the other representatives from these organizations are present. So although it sounds like a great idea to use the space, I do think that cross-country, a track for cross-country practice is a great idea. It's definitely something needed. I just don't think that this is something that the district should move forward with right now, as with the information that we're given.
I would like to say that I want to be able to read some of the information that you have. And I would be more than happy to discuss this after I've had time to look into the new information that you have, to just read through it and
Yeah, I'll
talk
type
to
it up.
some of the
I mean, it's
other.
all
and
on paper right now.
I'm very familiar with this.
Mhm.
When I first got on the board back in December of 2016, the county was talking about rezoning it just to have more value to whenever it went out for sale, because at the time, when I brought it forward twice, no one was interested in it on the
That's what I
board.
heard.
And for a $250,000 value at the time, and I still think it's a value of $250,000. that was a huge missed opportunity, in my opinion. But I do agree with you. I support the housing aspect, but because there's no more land near that high school, that we have to preserve what is there. And I'm interested in seeing what creative use that we might be able to come up with, or how we could support whoever it is, and keeping that a green space or something that could, to me, my fear is there's a development that comes there, and then 10, 20 years later, we realize we need more space, and you can't take back that development anymore. So I'm very interested, and I always like thinking outside the box, and I think on this, there might be something that we could do in partnership, but I just need to research it a little bit more.
Sure. In answering Ms. Rosario's question about that, I'm going to go back to that quote that I was just given before the meeting, and that was that Mr. Graves is retaining ownership and would like to hear what we could bring forward as ideas for a green space. And I think that's the new information, is that he is interested in hearing our ideas as a school board of what we might be able to do. Partnerships have done all the time. We do a partnership now with hurricane shelters. So we're in partnership with the county, and I'm not sure if we're in partnership with the city on anything, but we are in partnerships for lots of things. I didn't say we would own this land. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is maybe help with the solution that, to honor Jimmy Graves.
May I respond to that, Madam Chair?
Yes, and then Mrs. Justice has a comment.
So we do engage and go into partnership with others, and most of those are regarding activities, not regarding, land for use. So I think those are two totally different things. And if we have gone into partnership with another organization or a city entity or a county entity regarding land, I'm not familiar with it, so I would like to know, more about that. But I do appreciate you bringing this forth, and in the honor of, or in the effort of true transparency, when you do share your notes with us to review it, it would be nice. I think it would be prudent to include. I think Mrs. Justice asked for the attorney. I don't know why you wouldn't share the names and the phone numbers of the person that you spoke with, so that we can, reach out to the same people or kind of get the same kinds of information, because I'm just, if we're not completely transparent in something that we're talking about publicly, or wanting us to consider partnering in this, arena, I don't know if we're really gonna
It's an
make
attorney.
much headway. So I think that,
Sure. It's an attorney in his office that he is designated to make the phone calls back. Since he is a city commissioner, she said she is working on this to communicate because he is a city commissioner.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Council member, yes.
Can you say that again? Because I think you.
Right, I did call him, and he.
Who is he?
Mr. Graves.
Okay.
I called Mr. Graves, and he had an attorney in his office call me back because she is coordinating the calls on this, because he is a city council member. I'm not saying I'm trying to protect her name. What I'm saying is I didn't ask her if it's okay to speak her name on the dais. So I don't feel comfortable in doing that to someone until I get their permission. That's the only reason why I'm saying that. Not to protect, I don't have a secret person. It's just, I just don't think that's fair to somebody if I didn't say that to them. I did ask Jeff Pickering if I could bring up his name, and he said yes. So it's an interesting funding source that's out there that could possibly do something very interesting. It couldn't be, I guess the cost of the soccer field and track was right around $8 to $15 million, which that's kind of hard money to raise. So, right, so that's why
It's a big range, 8 to 15.
giving a possibility of some other ideas is something I think that might be doable.
Mrs. Zork, Matt?
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. You may have spoken with the Executive Director, Kelly Hawk, from Mr. Graves' office, who does handle a lot of the issues for the Graves Foundation. I think that there's always been a want for the school board to work together collaboratively to move this forward. And the county has been involved in different ways, and that has precluded the school district sometimes from being able to move forward. Mrs. Rourke brings up some good points about the fact that this was an opportunity for us. It is no longer an opportunity for us to own it right now, as Mr. Graves is the owner of the property, and respecting his rights to the property, I think going forward is very important. But I do think you're right, that the school board should be working collaboratively, and my understanding is the Graves Foundation, Jimmy Graves Foundation, has always wanted that to happen. So I think you bring up some good points. I just think going forward, I've heard some of these ideas before. They've been explored to a certain degree, but the school board has not been at the table. So let's have a bigger conversation about it. Dr. Moore, in what capacity, what type of a setting would be the most conducive to having that type of a conversation with all of the parties necessary to be there?
During a board discussion.
Through the chair, obviously, I think some variables have changed in the recent days. I did have a conversation with Mr. Graves, probably in the midst of COVID, so time blurs, and exploring the opportunity to create where we could possibly give land for the creation of a stadium to meet the intent. Obviously, that is no longer on the table, or the variables have changed. But I'd be very interested in exploring opportunities to connect, to meet the intent of the foundation, while at the same time creating and enhancing multiple opportunities for our students to use that land in a very productive way. Now, what that looks like, I don't know, but it seems as if there is a willingness on part of the Graves Foundation to explore those possibilities and participate in some creative thinking. My recommendation would be to begin some of those conversations around what our willingness would be, problem-solving, brainstorming, and as we begin to collect some of those, bring that back to the board to get additional feedback. So we could, in partnership with the Graves Foundation, begin, as the reality has changed, if there's a willingness to participate in some brainstorming and problem-solving, do some initial legwork, I guess, bring it back to the board for your input regarding what is, a way to get everything done to meet the intent of the Jimmy Graves Foundation, which I think is something I would be very interested in and willing and wanting to support to make that happen for that family, while at the same time, I think our missions in a lot of ways are aligned. We just need to facilitate the dialogue, the problem solving, as you say, Ms. Zork, thinking outside of the box. There may be some very innovative ways to use that land to get everything done that everyone wants.
So at this point, are you saying that you think you should you should meet with Mr. Graves again with Mr. Bass, and then come forward again and give an update to the board?
Absolutely. And to be very honest, what I thought was happening was not at all the case. So the land is not being sold. That was something that I didn't learn until, like earlier. So if that has changed and the opportunity to engage now that variables are different, I think we should.
Yeah. The reason why I bring this forward is I think we should be at the table. I think the school board, and I know you have had that opportunity in the past to be at the table in a different way. But I think, Jimmy Graves was one of our students, and his family has done a lot in this county. I think that his intent is to honor his son. And if we can help with doing that and also maintain that land as a green space somehow that our students can enjoy, that the community can enjoy, and then his son is still honored, I think is the best way to do this.
Mrs. Rosario.
Thank you. How about asking Dr. Moore to gather as much information as possible, invite, the powers that be with the Graves Foundation. I don't know their names, so I apologize, to come to the table, and maybe we can have at a discussion session, and we can just kind of discuss our options. What does that look like? Who are involved? But, I just don't know how to respond to this right now, because I don't know what you and Mrs. Justice, what you, Mrs. Zork, and Mrs. Justice experienced in the past. I don't know what those conversations were. This board wasn't, the three of us weren't a part of that. So there's no history there. Maybe if Dr. Moore can put something together like that, get us up to speed, all of us, so we're all on the same page, then maybe we can, ask the question, where do we fit in the equation if we do at all?
Thank you, Mrs. Rosario. Can I just clarify, there was really never deep discussion on this? It was shut down from the first time that it was brought up for the school district to really try to work with the county. The county had made all concessions to try to work with the school district so that we could own that property at $250,000. But whenever they did see that the school district was not interested in trying to navigate that way, I think they come up with the option of having a nonprofit take it so that it didn't turn into the housing that it was zoned, that it possibly could have been zoned for multifamily. One thing I do know is that there was a draft plan of having a track field and some other things, which is very expensive, and that was part of the drafting of what potentially could have went on that property with the foundation. I, as a board member, that had come to the board about the track field, and at that time, we couldn't afford the track field because it is quite expensive. So when I'm looking at trying to think outside the box, I'm looking at how can we, I don't want to give off any false intentions that I'm willing to build a track field or something like that there, but I am interested in seeing how we can partner with them to help them keep it a green space. But I don't see where we have, significant dollars.
No, we don't. I know that.
And I know, but I want to make sure that that's out there, that I'm not, when I say I want to talk about this more, it's not because I'm saying I agree I want to build these, not that it wouldn't be nice to have them, but we just don't have the funds there at this time to be able to do something like that. So would you like, Mrs. Barenborg, my suggestion is let Dr. Moore and Mr. Bass and even Mr. Fagan, whoever Dr. Moore wants to have, talk with the foundation, with Mr. Graves, and see what options and what ideas they have, and then have Dr. Moore bring that to us as a board, and then at that time, we could look at maybe the second step if we wanted to bring in the individuals and actually have a dialogue with all of us.
Yes. I know as board members, we have the right to bring an item up for discussion. That is why I did that, because I have had people in the community ask me, would you be willing to do this because it hasn't been done in a while? So that is why I brought the item up tonight. That is why I made all the phone calls I made, because I believe it's important to research. This is not taken away from the foundation. This is not taken away from anything that's been done. When people in the community approach me about something with an idea that they could help with the funding, of course, that's interesting. So thank you for hearing me out on that, and I look forward to giving you an update on the information that I have here.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So let's go into school board member matters. Mrs. Rosario, would you like to start off?
Sure, thank you. I wanted to remind everybody about Friday. Friday is September 11th. It is incredibly important that we do not forget the events that occurred on September 11th, 2001. Kids nowadays are too young to remember. It seems it's been so long that an entire generation will not have the opportunity to ever see the original Twin Towers and some of the other historic buildings, the Pentagon that had been hit on 9/11. It's a day that many people will never forget. It's a day in history that I will never, ever forget. I was working in Manhattan as a teacher on 51st and 2nd Avenue. And as a result, like millions of other New Yorkers, I had to walk from Manhattan over the bridge in flip-flops to Queens. I would say the distance would have been about maybe from here to maybe a Palm Beach borderline. The border from here to Palm Beach. It was just incredible. It's speechless. And for those people who were in New York and in Pennsylvania and in Washington, D.C. at the time, you know the devastation, you know the soot that remained on your windows, boroughs and boroughs and boroughs and boroughs away from the main site. Lives that were lost because of the horrific terrorist attacks on America. And the many, 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 at this point now, many years later, there are more first responders who have lost their lives in total, those who have lost their lives rescuing people and those who have lost their lives as a result of residual cancer from breathing in all of those fumes. I mean, your first reaction is to go in and save lives. They did not have masks, many of them at the time, and you're talking about fumes and oils and I say many of this, and I don't doubt that you all wouldn't have remembered the events of those days, but there are many people who are watching who don't remember. And I hope and pray, I did reach out to Dr. Moore on this, and I hope that our schools, specifically our high schools, because they are older, but even our elementary schools have an opportunity too, middle schools as well, where our teachers can remind students what happened, teach this historic event, not from a celebratory, place, of course, but from a factual place. I hope that we, as a district, can sort of encapsulate, I suppose, and maybe, I don't even know if we have, I asked Dr. Moore to look into this, if we have a curriculum to teach on this particular day that we can embrace from year to year. In previous years, I think what was shared was that some history teachers would teach on it, but it wasn't consistent. I'd like to see the district have something in place, where we are sure that the events of 9/11 are never lost and that they're never forgotten. So I want to thank all of the first responders who were there at the time. I want to thank the family members of those who have lost loved ones on that day. I want to thank those people who volunteered, because there were many, many, many volunteers as well, to go in and help clean up the rubble. The firefighters and the New Yorkers who had to do unthinkable things to search for those who were lost. So parents and children, I encourage everybody to find time on 9/11 to honor those people and remember, just remember, never forget that September 11th of 2011 seems to be so long ago, and yet for so many millions of Americans, it was like it happened yesterday. So for my board member matters, that is what I wanted to share, and I hold everyone who suffered any loss on that day. I hold them close in my prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Rosario. Mrs. Justice?
I think Mrs. Rosario's comments were poignant, and I think we'll just leave it at that. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Mrs. Rosario. I hope everyone continues to have a good week at school.
Thank you. Mrs. Barrenborg?
Couple of meetings that I wanted to kind of give you some information about. I attended I tried to attend the Indian River County Zoning and Planning meeting, but there was a miscommunication with their phone call-in process. And by the time I got able to get a hold of the person that was supposed to help me with that, the meeting was already over. I guess it was an 8-minute record meeting, so not sure what was discussed so much. I'll have to check that out later. The second meeting that I attended was the Executive Roundtable meeting that we finally had a Zoom call, and it was interesting. Presentation was given by Barbara Schlitt-Ford on Indian River Cares, which I had just learned about was in existence, and juvenile justice update, and the U.S. Census update, which they've asked us to please send out more information on our part as a school board and the other entities to remind everybody that there are going to be people walking and knocking on doors. They're okay, they're friendly people, they have badges, and they're there to get information that will help us in hopefully funding in the future. And I asked Nancy to forward that information to you, and she already has. So as soon as I get the notes, I think I have them, I'll forward those to you. And the presentation that was done from Indian River Cares, I'll send that out to everybody. Also, I attended the Treasure Coast Council of Local Governments meeting, and they figured out how to do Zoom, so we did that. And that's where I learned about the Wi-Fi equipped buses that were being parked around St. Lucie for their students to access Wi-Fi. So there were other conversations about the rodeo in Okeechobee that it happened this last weekend, but you know, those are items that you don't really need to be updated on. Just the Wi-Fi idea from the buses I thought was quite creative and interesting. So if we have issues with Wi-Fi, I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Dr. Shipp?
Happy third week of school.
Thank you.
That's all I got.
Thank you, Mrs. Rosario, for bringing that, that item for our board member matters. I'm happy that you did bring it up, and especially as someone that was there on basically you were near ground zero, and I do agree with you that it's up to us to keep the facts of the history going. And personally, I do like to find some documentaries, and I do every 9/11. I don't think my son's too young for it. I think he needs to know what 9/11 is, and so as a family, we do walk through that, and that's something that I don't want to forget either. So thank you for that. Dr. Moore?
I have nothing else, Madam Chair.
Thank you. All right, everyone have a spectacular week, and we'll see you back here on the what's the next day, Nancy? 22nd.